Hello, Advanced Writing peeps. So this is Friday, March 27th, and today we're looking at Tool 28 from Roy Peter Clarke's book. And I call this tool, or the importance of this tool, can be summed up in one word: location. And in fact, it's so important, it can be used, it's such an effective tool for the writer that let's echo the realtor's cry. It's all about location, location, location. We're going to look at what you're locating side by side in your text and where you're locating these things. So we call this juxtaposition. Juxtaposition is when we place two things side by side in order that their similarities, but more importantly, their differences become obvious, and the difference between the two results in some kind of statement, insight, revelation, truth that surfaces. And this thing cannot be clearly seen or understood until these two things are set side by side. So the two things might be, as in the picture here, similar. There are two versions of the same object, and here you can see the similarities. That's why both comparison and contrast are important, because there's something similar, and it's in this tension between what's similar between the two things, but the differences that immediately emerge when they're placed side by side. That the importance that the statement is being made by the writer or the photographer or the artist who's doing the juxtaposition. So if they're not set side by side, then these things are lost on the viewer or on the reader. So the whole point of this is to have you start becoming aware and reflecting. Remember, writing is an art of perception. So as you see things, as you hear things, as you hear two people talking, perhaps there's something very significant in the difference of what they are saying. Roy Peter Clarke uses the example from Madame Bovary, where the guy is making a pitch for Madame Bovary in the midst of all of these animal sounds of the fair. In other words, by setting these things side by side, he's emphasizing the animal nature of what's about to happen between this man and this married woman. Here's one of my favorite examples of juxtaposition. It's from the short story Araby by James Joyce, and something very similar is going on here. Joyce is seeing something, he's capturing this street scene in his writing, and there are two very different things. So the similarity is that you have this aunt and this boy, like everyone else in the street, they're out buying, they're trading, they're involved in trade, in the consumption of consumer goods. But the boy, what's strikingly different in this juxtaposition is the boy is living in a fantasy world. He's almost totally oblivious to the realities of what's going on in the street, because his mind, his imagination, has recast these things in a different context. So he sees himself as like a knight errant. I mean, this is an adolescent child, an adolescent boy from a kind of a coming of age story. And he thinks he's on a quest for his first crush, the older sister of his best friend. Her image accompanied me on Saturday evenings when my aunt went marketing and I had to carry her parcels. So notice she went marketing. This is the similarity. They're on the streets, involved in the same task that everyone else on the streets are involved in. We walk through flaring streets, jostled by drunken men and bargaining women, amid the curses of laborers, the shrill litanies of shop boys who stood by barrels of pigs' cheeks. Now just notice the contrast here. So this girl's image is accompanying him, and then here's this boy carrying his aunt's parcels and walking by barrels of pigs' cheeks. And notice this, Joyce is doing something here with this juxtaposition. If you know anything about Araby, you know that it's a revelation that sex is a consumer good. The boy realizes that his crush on this girl is, there's nothing beautiful or otherworldly or ideal or pure or romantic about it. That's the nature of the coming of age. And actually what Joyce is really talking about is his loss of faith. So it's not loss of innocence for him. The story is really about that he comes to this revelation that the church is this fantasy world, not dealing with the realities of drunken men, bargaining women, laborers, the need to work, the shop boys, the barrels of pigs' cheeks. This is what is real. And but here, Joyce is using this to such great effect. And notice the detail of the pig's cheeks. It's an unclean meat. These noises converged in a single sensation of life for me. I imagined, keyword, verb, I bore my chalice safely through a throng of foes. An excellent example of what juxtaposition looks like in writing. So for today, for the rest of the class, we're going to spend it in some exercises for the portfolios. So this is the first of 2 slides, and you will notice the pictures on the slides. I will repost these slides at the end of the PowerPoint so you can study them without my narration going on. But there are, let me do a quick recount here. There are 16 pictures here, which means there are 8 pairs of pictures. These pictures, some of these pictures come from an actual photograph where one of the other objects is juxtaposed beside it. Some of the pictures are just pictures of those objects, so you can't match the photos, okay? You can't look for 2 photos that look like they belong together in one photograph. But 2 of these things will be found together in one photograph, and I will show you the photographs later. But for now, I want you to study those pictures and pair them up. Which of these things were found juxtaposed next to each other in a single photograph? So pair them up. You'll have 8 pairs of objects, 8 pairs of these pictures, and the 2 things in these pictures will be found together in one photograph. And the reason they're found together in one photograph is because the photographer saw them in a particular setting, side by side, and he snapped a picture of them. And the reason he did is because when he saw these 2 things juxtaposed side by side, something jumped out at him or her, and they had a revelation. They saw a statement in the juxtaposition of the 2 things. So as you put these objects together, think about, okay, how could the juxtaposition of these 2 things be making a statement that a photographer would want to capture and show in a photograph? Let's go on to the next slide. So again, here is, I believe we have 16 pictures again, yeah. And so another 8 pairs of pictures. So do the same thing with this slide. Put 2 of these pictures together which ones will you find juxtaposed next to each other in a photograph? And then what statement would the photographer be making? And it's not that the photographer is making the statement. Understand that when the photographer saw these two things side by side on a street, as he or she was walking down a street, or somewhere else, it jumped out at them. The juxtaposition of the two things revealed something to the observer, to the watcher, to the perceiver. So again, match two of these pictures up, which two things, when put together, could be making a statement, and that the photographer, when he or she saw these two things side by side, they snapped the picture to make a statement. Okay, so you're going to list the objects and then write a statement for each pair of objects, drawing insight from their juxtaposition. So you are going to make a statement if these two things were juxtaposed side by side in one photograph, in the same photograph. This is what the photographer would be trying to say. Okay, is that clear? So for this portfolio exercise, you're actually going to have two exercises. They're going to be the same kind of thing. The first one, you'll use the previous slide. You'll list 8 pairs of objects that you could see juxtaposed next to each other in one photograph. And then you'll write a statement for each pair of objects. This is what I think juxtaposing these objects side by side, finding, discovering, seeing these objects juxtaposed side by side, this is what would jump out to the sensitive, thinking observer. It would be making this statement. So portfolio exercise. Upload your list of 16 paired objects and the statement that goes with each pair. So you're going to have each slide, you'll have a list of 8 paired objects and 8 statements that the juxtaposition of those two objects would be saying. Then work on preparing the final draft of Essay 5 for submission. And let's go back to the beginning of the week. This is very important. List the different parts of Essay 5. In other words, when you reread your first draft of Essay 5, what different parts does it seem naturally to fall into? Where is there a significant change or turn? And so list what's going on then in each section, and then create a subheading from those lists, from your list, and add those subheadings to your final draft before you submit it. Okay, if you have questions or concerns, please email me. God bless.